So last month we knew prices were going to drop in July and August as they typically do. However, I was a little bit caught off guard by how much they dropped. Now, drilling down on this, it looks like our darling, the city of Toronto, is pretty much responsible for how big of a drop we saw. Now, if you're not aware, the city of Toronto typically has the highest dollar volume of transactions every single month, as well as the highest number of transactions that typically happen relative to the rest of the GTA. Because the city of Toronto makes up such a big portion of the GTA transaction volume, when they sneeze, the GTA catches a little bit of a cold, and that is what's happening here. So the data has been skewed mostly because of the city of Toronto numbers. Now let's drill down, and we're going to compare Toronto to York and Durham, just so that you understand how this impacts overall data. If you look at York region for detached, this is the top line right here, you'll see detached has been in relatively stable, but then somewhat declined since kind of the middle of 2024. And it's been this steady decline going into this year. Now, it seems that we've hit some sort of a bottom, because this is the unusual thing. Typically, we don't bottom out in the summer and then go up, but this is kind of like what we're seeing. I have to tell you, from actively participating and bidding myself personally and having listings in Stouffville, Markham, I don't see the market doing this dip. I mean, it's been more of a steady, gradual grind down than something like this where we had a dip and now prices are going up. I don't feel prices are going up, but this is the aggregate of York region. Overall, prices are on their way down. Exact same story with semis and townhouses as well as condos. It's just very gradual and slow, but everything is kind of trending down. I expect this maybe, we might have a bit of a recovery in the fall, and I'll tell you why I think that. But let's take a look at the city of Toronto, how it's different, completely different from York region. Now, it's almost kind of difficult to make sense of this data because it's difficult to actually just get a trend out of it, especially on the freehold side, the semis and the towns. The variability here is driven because the city of Toronto has a very wide range of property type and prices. So you have bungalows at $1 million, and then you have high-end luxury at 4 million plus, and then everything in between. So that will skew your data in terms of when things sell. So for example, the higher end, bigger homes typically will sell in the spring a lot of times. And that's why you'll see the price or the median price go up more in the spring. It's not so much that prices went up, but because you just have a lot more expensive inventory selling then. What's interesting is this drop we're seeing right now, and this is the drop that I was talking about, that this is what's skewing data for this summer and why it looks like this July is really bad. It's because Toronto had a really rough July, and it's because of makeup of type of properties. But typically you don't see it in the summer. Like you see the summers, it's kind of like, prices are lower, but they're stable, lower, stable. And then here in the fall, they dropped in 2023. 2022, again, nothing as crazy as we're seeing now. We're just kind of falling off a cliff during a time when they're not technically, quote unquote, supposed to be falling off a cliff. So this is why we're getting skewed data for the month of July. Now, I have a theory, and this is Durham. I think Durham is probably one of the better places to look at if you want to understand the market at large. The reason I say that, especially in the detached end, I feel Durham's prices are very much reflective of what is actually happening and how we should interpret the data month to month. The reason I say that is that in Durham, you will have a very tight range of freehold detached homes. So for example, most detached homes in Durham will trade between, let's say, $800,000 to 1 million, maybe 1.1, maybe 1.2, but it's a very tight range. Whereas in the city of Toronto, you'll have anything detached from $800,000 to $8 million, which skews data substantially. So I think Durham is probably the most representative of what is actually happening on a property type basis across the GTA. So you've seen this grind down on prices, but it's very slow and it's a very steady grind down. Prices are going down, but it's not as dramatic as we saw in our monthly stats. So Durham freeholds, this is what they're doing. They actually look relatively flat, but on their way down. Similar for townhouses and semis, and condos in Durham have been relatively stable. So the interpretation of this for me personally is if I was to take this freehold line and apply it to $1.4 million homes in York region, that band and that type of property is probably going to look closer to this than the jagged graph of the city of Toronto. If I go and apply this same graph to maybe detached in Mississauga, again, under 1.5, it's going to look probably a lot more like this than the jagged line of the city of Toronto. So new listings remain above normal, but we're going down as expected. And the good news here is that we're seeing liquidity. And so let's just take May, for example. In May, we sold roughly 62% of what we typically do. So we sold 6,200 homes. Typically we sell 10,000. So roughly 62% absorption relative to normal. However, in July, we had 72% absorption, meaning that relative to normal, now 72% of homes are selling. What is happening here? Sellers are becoming a lot more reasonable or accepting that prices are going down, and maybe waiting further is probably going to get them or net them a lower price. So some of them are quote unquote capitulating. Some of them are just accepting reality. Not all of them, actually most still aren't. But a lot of the deals that are happening right now, sellers are just like, you know what? I feel that maybe prices are going to be lower going into the fall, so I'm just going to take what I can now and move on. Now, this is the season of low balls, and who doesn't love a low ball? Personally, I'm a huge fan. However, there's a right and a wrong way to low ball properties. I'm just going to kind of rant quickly here just to give you guys, buyers especially, if you're going to low ball, do it properly. Don't waste your time, and don't decrease your odds of getting a property because you're just shooting from the hip. You have no idea what you're doing. So let's talk about it. Sometimes I'll get low balls where I'm just kind of thinking to myself, did they accidentally hit send before sending it? Like, did they type the offer with their forehead and then send it to me? Because it's like, it just makes absolutely no sense. But again, par for the course. Look, if a listing just came on the market, it's 2 days on the market, and you're going to come in at $200,000 over asking, the place is turnkey and it's getting steady showings, like, what are you thinking? If it's priced well, like, just because you want to send, like, I mean, you can send a low ball, but if you're legitimately thinking about that place, let's say as an end user, if you're an end user and you want a low ball, you got to be strategic, because if you really find the place you like, you can literally burn your opportunity of getting it just by acting like that. Now, as an investor, some investors, they'll low ball and, they don't care. And that's fine. Like, at that, I can't get mad at that. I mean, I do it too. Like, I'm actively low balling on places right now, but obviously, I'm deploying more strategy than just shooting out offers. I actually want to get some of these places. So for me, it's a little bit more of a tactful operation. But if you're going to do it, at least make the rest of the offer strong. Like, come in with a strong deposit. Show me that you're going to close. Like, prove to me all those things. At least if I'm going to give this place away, I want to make sure there's going to be no headache. And I want to make sure you can close. And I want to make sure that I'm moving on with my life. So just think about it from the seller's perspective. Obviously, this is for you. You want to get the deal. I get it. But offer something else rather than just a low ball, because a low ball with a crappy deposit and just all those other things riddled with conditions, I mean, it's not going to work. But I mean, everybody has to learn their lesson the hard way. So if you want to spend your time doing that, by all means, do it. I'm just trying to tell you, like, have some consideration. Think about it. Be a little bit more strategic, because ultimately, if you want to get a deal done, that's what you have to do. If you're just out there wasting time, you want to, if you want to just kick the tires on a couple of these places, by all means, knock your socks off. But it's just not a good strategy if you actually want to get stuff done. And then for sellers, like, I mean, you can't take this stuff personally. You have to remember, this buyer, especially the ones that come with a dumb low balls, you have to remember, they have an uncle that flipped a duplex in like 2009, and he's still like living off that dream, like an Uncle Rico type. And he's telling them what to do. He's probably telling them, hey, you can get this $1.2 million house for like $600K. Offer them $550, start at $550, anchor them down. Maybe he read a book on negotiations. Maybe that's what's going to do it. It's not, but you have to remember who's in the buyer's ear. And a lot of times buyers have Dunning-Kruger. They think they know best, and they've done 0 deals in the past, but they think they know best. Or maybe they've done 2 or 3 deals. Who knows? It doesn't matter. But for sellers, don't take it personally. I've had sellers where we've gotten low balls and they've wanted to counter with a price higher than the original asking price because they were offended. And obviously that's not a good move either, because it's like, what does that accomplish? That's my rant on low balls. Go out there, low ball. Just put some thought into it if you actually want to get something done. Because if you're just shooting them out there, it's absolutely nothing's going to happen. It's just, you're not going to be able to get the house for the price of 3 bananas and a bag of chips. Offers should start a conversation. And that's what the whole point of the original or initial offer is. It's not to punk anybody off or try to make yourself feel good. So just remember that. Lastly, and least exciting, still active listings over 30,000. This is going to continue to drop down probably going into September.